Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, and I am joined with my partner, Miss Lolly Tolentino.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
How are you doing, Lolly Tolentino? You know, Lolly Tolentino. You know what's amazing is it did not rain today.
Oh yeah, nice weather. I mean, but it's. I feel the hot. It was hot.
Okay, might have been hot. I don't know if I would rather have hot or not rain, but for me, it didn't rain, didn't rain today. Although it is raining on someone this week. Here on the World News Jam, we talk about stories going on around the world, some of the interesting stuff that happened this week. And this week, it is raining on the ex-president of the United States, Donald Trump.
Yeah, your favorite president, the one and only President Trump, got indicted again.
He has a dark cloud, following him around. So for the third time in 4 months, the ex-president of the United States has been indicted on criminal charges there in the United States. That is not including any of the other lawsuits and the state cases against him, and the fact that he lost the sexual assault case. This time, it's all about the criminal scheme to overturn the election that he lost. And now people are going, well, wait a minute, when was that? It was a while ago.
What do you mean? Who asked that question?
Back in 2020.
Yes.
It's been going on for a while. But they finally are going to bring federal charges against the ex-president this week in that particular case. And there are 4 counts. And the counts are conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against the people's right to vote and have their votes counted. Now, these are charges that I have never heard before. And you know why I have never heard them before, Lolly?
Why?
Because never before have we ever indicted a president in the United States.
That makes sense.
So I know there are other indictments. We have the hush money payment for the porn star, the what's the other one? The waving around of the highly classified attacks on the Iran, even calling up the Secretary of State in Georgia and asking him to fudge the numbers of the last election. Those are pretty good, but this one, as far as I can read, and I sat down and read it, it's not that long. It's 45 pages, 49 pages.
45.
But this one is different. This one has to do mostly with the future of democracy in the United States. And is there a flaw in the democratic system that can be exploited and manipulated? And can the United States government find a way to stop this from happening again? Now, the coup attempt to overturn the election was stopped. However, is the leader of that coup attempt going to be ever held accountable, and that person being Donald Trump?
Yeah. But Eric, isn't it pretty obvious what happened that day? I mean, when I woke up that morning, I turned on my television and I saw that what is happening? It's in Capitol, and there are people running around with I don't know. I was like, oh my God. That was the first time it happened in America, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last time this kind of happened was back in the 1800s.
Oh my God, in the 1800s?
But we won't count that. That's pretty long ago. I mean, it's something that you usually turn on the TV and you see in Africa. I'm just choosing Africa because they do have a lot of coup attempts in Africa, and they have, stuff where you see people attacking the police. And this was one of those times, and the question being, who is behind it? Who was behind that coup attempt? Because in that coup attempt of the United States government for the presidency, over 400 people have gone to jail. And even more are still on, they're still waiting for their time, waiting for their trial to come up. But the ones that actually instigated it, the ones that put it all together, that planned the whole thing, are they going to be held accountable? And so a lot of people have said no, that they
Why?
don't think that the president and his people will ever be found accountable. And they had the U.S. government had a whole hearings and everything, and they showed all the stuff that happened. It was unbelievable. People couldn't believe how involved the president was in this. And now finally, after 2.5 years, the United States government is finally saying, okay, we're going to try and hold someone accountable for what happened on January 6th, and that the illegality of a coup attempt in the United States. Now, when we look back on all the things that happened, I mean, this thing that's coming up, we keep talking about Georgia. Keep hearing Georgia, the Secretary of State, Georgia. And when Donald Trump called him up and said, we need 11,780 votes. You have to make 11,780 votes appear so we can take Georgia. And the only thing that the Secretary of State really could do at that time was to record the phone call, which he did.
Yes.
And that's the infamous phone call that we have. And so, that was one thing that Donald Trump tried to do. He tried to get the Secretary of State of Georgia to find him some votes, right? Find votes. So that's one thing. And then, we get to the vice president, who basically has a ceremonial role in declaring the president. He's the one that he goes in, he says, let's officially count the votes. But I mean, he just basically reads off a script.
Yeah.
And what Trump was trying to get him to do, was pressuring the vice president to do, was to not do this. Was to say, in fact, it was on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, Donald Trump called up the Vice President, Mike Pence, and said, you need to do something. You need to just don't declare Biden the president. Just put it off, and then we'll take it from there. And so that didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work because, in the first place, Mike, the vice president himself, he knows that is illegal.
He knows he can't do it.
Yeah,
In
he
fact,
can't do it.
all of Trump's lawyers, the White House lawyers, said he can't do that. Why are we trying to pressure him to do something that he can't even do legally? And Mike Pence's people are saying, Mike Pence, you can't do that. And they're telling Trump's guy, and Trump's lawyers are saying, we know this. And so Trump brought in these, what they call the crazies, these crazy lawyers like Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, said, let's just do it. Let's just do it, whether it's illegal or not. And then we'll get it, can keep delaying it until we can get this thrown into Congress. And then once it gets into Congress, we'll get the Republicans there to push it. And I'm like, this will never work. Now, everybody was saying this will never work. And so what he finally had to do, there was nothing left, send the mob to the Capitol.
Eric, a conversation with some friends before, when we were watching that news, listening to what's happening in the U.S., they say, is that America? I will not wonder if it is something like Philippines, but America. I mean, we are just making it a joke, like, something, it can happen probably in the Philippines or something, but not in America. But why is that happening, and why did it happen? And for God, God is good that, it did, Mike Pence did not allow it. I mean, he did not do it because he knows that it's illegal. I don't know what other word that you can use.
Well, the thing that I find fascinating about this, I mean, now that the indictment has come out and they've read it, is just how close this was to happening. I mean, this could have gone the other way very easily. They put in these fake electors, this crazy scheme that they had to bring in, and this guy Eastman, this lawyer, this nutso lawyer that who's, by the way, who's not nutso. He's actually a very good lawyer, and he was telling Trump, hey, you know what, let's do? Let's have each state, he kind of took certain laws and twisted them a certain way to say, each state can pick their own electors. They don't have to pick the electors based on the vote count. which is actually what they do. We just never had to say that before. So, like there's one word out of a sentence where you say, you know what, oh, they can pick their own electors. We don't have to take the electors that are given to us, which is illegal. I mean, we've now discovered that that cannot happen. And that's what they were trying to do. And everybody knew they wouldn't get away with it. Even his own lawyers, like, you'll never get away with that. Which is, we've explained this before, on the show before, about how the Electoral College works and how they brought fake ones to Washington, and what the planning was, they were going to let them sleep inside the Capitol, like hidden in the Capitol, and then wake up and then rush in, and then they would be the state's electors before the real ones got there. And when they went to try and get into the Capitol, they wouldn't let them in because they didn't have the proper documentation and so forth. And there was a great video piece of them trying to get in to the Capitol on that day to act as the electors. And so they come in as these electors, and these people, the real electors, come in and they go, well, which one we're going to pick? Well, let's just put it off. Let's put it off until later. And then in that amount of time, they have a chance to, I mean, there was a guy, trying to, Trump was even possibly thinking about bringing in the military, but the military wouldn't follow it. The military's like, well, we're not doing that. So that's a problem between, some of these African countries and some of these other countries that we've talked about, like Thailand, where the guy has the military, and literally it's whoever has the military in their back is the one that wins the coup, usually. When we start to look at what is happening now and what is going to happen, we start to get a better understanding of who we're dealing with. Now, he's got a couple of indictments already, but this indictment, the court this week, he went to court, and they told him in the court, in the proceedings, by the way, because Trump is now going to get all the information that they have got on him. And that they would not bring this to court unless they had him dead to rights. Okay. I mean, they've got him good. Now, these days, after the indictment came out this week, Trump now and his lawyers get to see everything. They get to see all the paperwork, and they get to see who it is that has been testifying to the grand jury. So now Trump knows who's been turning on him. So the judge said, all right, you're going to know all this stuff, but don't you threaten witnesses, and don't you try and intimidate people, and don't discuss any of this. Don't write about it on your social media, because this can be really dangerous. Oh, yes. I mean, look at the people that, went in and, pooped all over the floors of the Capitol building, and, had a rope outside trying to hang Mike Pence, going in to kill Nancy Pelosi. A lot of these people don't want it known that they spoke truthfully to the grand jury. It's like Trump said when he was talking about Mike Pence before. He was saying, Mike, you're too honest.
Don't you like, somebody that you work with who are honest?
So, in any case, 24 hours, less than 24 hours after
the
indictment, what did Trump do? He came out on his social media. He said, if you're going to go after me, then I'm coming after you.
Wow. That's a big threat, actually.
Yeah. So everybody's like, they're talking about this, on your favorite news show, on Fox News. They're going, is that a threat? I don't know. What does it sound like to you? But this is interesting, because now that Trump knows, he knows who's been talking to the grand jury and who's been saying stuff about him and all this stuff. And he came out and he said that. And then he came out and was talked about. He said, we were talking about this earlier. Wow, it finally happened. Little Mike Pence, which, by the way, Mike Pence is not that little. The vice president, a man who was about to be ousted as governor of Indiana until I came along and made him the vice president, has gone to the dark side. I never told him a newly emboldened Pence to put me above the Constitution. or that Mike was too honest. Now, the only way that Trump would know to write that is if he read the indictment.
Of course. Obviously, he read it.
He read the indictment, and then he posted what he read on social media, and then he made that threat. Exactly what the judge told him he couldn't do. And so, I mean, if that was me, Lolly, you know where I would be right now?
Where?
In jail.
Definitely.
I would be put in jail.
Yeah.
So now they got to figure out what they're going to do about Trump. Now, they told Trump's lawyers, listen, okay, Monday you got to come in and explain yourself.
Yes, yes.
And so Trump's lawyers like, oh, we can't do it on Monday. Monday's no good for us. And the judge said, Monday. So they got to come in on Monday, and they got
I'm excited to wait for them on Monday. I'll be there.
Be there on Monday. But this is going to be interesting because on Monday, I have a feeling, I could be wrong, but the judge is going to say, all right, listen, you do it again, and we're going to incarcerate him until the trial. Which is what they do. That's what they do. If they let you go, if you're out on bail or they let you go on your own recognizance and let you go until your trial, and you break the terms that the judge has set upon you, immediately the sheriff's department, they get you, they bring you, they put you in jail. So obviously that has happened.
Okay.
So now this is an ex-president and it's complicated and I know blah yada yada. So what are they going to do with Donald Trump? I mean,
well, maybe they're thinking of what to do now, just in case, because what he's doing now, I mean, he's like doing his own rhetoric, his own little retaliation, and because he's back to social media, he will be saying things over and over again. I did not see any remorse on Trump at all.
And we've been letting him go all this time. We've been letting him do this, and just, everybody's with kid gloves. And, everybody keeps talking about this two-tier system. The Republicans are all like, well, it's a two-tier system. With the Democrats, everybody gets off easier. Hillary Clinton got off easy. She had classified documents. Okay, by the way, it's completely different. When Hillary Clinton had classified, or they realized after looking through all of her stuff that the actual classified documents were very small, and then she cooperated. She actually came in and was questioned by Congress for hours, whatever. She cooperated. He did not. This is going back to another indictment that he's under now, where he took documents from the White House, and then they asked for the documents back, and instead of giving them back, he hid them. He had his guys, who are also indicted now, hide the documents. So it's a big difference. It's a big difference there. But I mean, they've been treated. It is a two-tier system. They have actually been letting Donald Trump go on so many issues and so many things that now he's emboldened. Like, I can do anything. I can say anything I want. But the big difference now with this particular thing is, look what happened last time. Trump got his people to storm the Capitol, and people died. And so now he's saying, well, if you come after me, I'll come after, because now he knows. Now he knows who went in front of the grand jury and who said what. So is he going to say some names like he just said Mike Pence yesterday? And what kind of danger does that put those people in?
Oh, well, it's going to be a dangerous thing. And I will be watching. There's some, what do you call this? I don't know. Is it Is a town hall thing that's going to happen tonight or tomorrow night?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mike Pence will be there. I think it was Christie. I want to hear, what they're going to say about this indictment. Because they're going to interview them. So I want to listen to that.
The Republicans have been goodness gracious, I can't even believe some of the excuses they have for this indictment. But not Chris Christie. Chris Christie comes right out and says, you know what, he's guilty. He did this. He should be in jail. But, Chris Christie will never win the Republican nomination. I think he's polling at 1%.
Yeah, I think he's just there to, say what he wants to say.
He's there because he knows once this is all over, that MSNBC or CNN or somebody's going to offer him a job.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, which is smart thing to do.
And he's funny. I mean, I like Chris Christie. He's the only guy that'll come out and say stuff, openly. Because the rest of them give all these, well, freedom of speech. But it's not freedom of speech. I know what freedom of speech is. And if you go out and you say something, you can't go out and say something that's fraudulent. We have free cars at Makati Avenue today. Come and get your free car. All right, that's not really, you can't really say, because millions of people are going to show up to get a free car, but we're just lying. You can't. It's free speech. Well, not really. And the same thing was, you cannot say, you can say, well, I think I was cheated in the election, but you can't say that there is fraud. We have proof there is fraud. They were, they've overturned the votes. This is, I won the election. Now go to the Capitol building and take back our government and use violence. You can't say stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's where free speech is a line. There's a line that you can't use. And so that argument of, well, it's free speech, you can say whatever you want in the United States. Well, you can and you can't.
Yeah, it depends. So, that's I have that question over and over about, what's happening in America, especially when Donald Trump, sit as president. And there's a lot of changes about people's mind because of what he's saying, and there's a lot of people still believing in him, even though they said there's a proof already, there's evidence that he did this, he did that, and still still denying it. No, it's just politics, it's just like that.
It almost makes my head swim when they keep talking about this free speech, because you can say Donald Trump can say, I was cheated, I really won the election. You can say dead people voted. You can say that Hugo Chavez, the past president of Venezuela, somehow manipulated the voting machines in the U.S., even though he's been dead for 10 years, which is what they were saying. I mean, some ridiculous thing. However, you cannot use your position as president to discount legitimate votes in order to subvert election results. That is illegal. And that is part of one of those, the conspiracy against people's right to vote and have their votes counted. I mean, that is one of the charges in this indictment. Now, we were going on about what people are saying, and I think we were talking about this earlier, that Donald Trump's attorney came on Fox yesterday and said that Trump was just asking Pence to put the election results on hold, the proceedings on hold, till they can get this whole thing figured out. So people are saying, well, so that's what he was doing. That is the crime. That's the crime. I can't believe that the lawyer came out and said that. I was a little shocked, which is why they say, defense attorneys should never come on television and talk about their cases until they're over, which is the same thing that they say to people that have been indicted. Don't come on television, don't write about it, don't say anything about it, because that'll get you into trouble.
Exactly. So that is, that can be used as evidence.
I mean, the big thing, and then we'll move on here, is the big thing is, what was Trump's frame of mind? Did Trump believe that he had won the election, or did he know that he had lost the election and that was, fraudulently telling people that, the election was stolen from him? And according to the problem is, according to these things we don't know. We don't know what it says yet, but it's been released to Donald Trump's lawyers this past week. We don't know what's in that thing, but the people that were in front of the grand jury said, you know what, Trump knew. He knew he had lost.
I believe so. But, he cannot accept that, and he will never accept that he did not, he didn't make it.
I think he knew, and he's just let's just, what was his father always tell him, there's winners and there are losers. You're either one or the other. So anyway, that's Fred Trump. But anyway, I mean, I want to move on to some stuff that's even worse news. Well, it might be good news. But there was something that I wanted to talk about, and only because we talked about it here on the show back in 2018. You and I did, because I remember that show. And it happened, it was October 27, 2018, at 9:45 a.m. in the morning at the True Life Synagogue. And we talked about this, I think, 2 or 3 shows. And so it has finally come to a close, and that's why I wanted to bring it up again. And just to remember, they had just begun morning service in the chapel. It's a Jewish chapel there. About 9:50 a.m., a bearded, heavy-set man entered the building and started shooting.
Yeah.
He shot for about 20 minutes. He had an AR-15, which we talked about, 357 semi-automatic pistols. But he wasn't just a guy shooting wildly, some crazy guy. He picked his targets, and he shot at them directly because, like many people throughout history, he hated Jews. He hated Jewish people. So after shooting upstairs, he continued downstairs, where people were hiding in closets and under tables. He opened the closet doors. He went under the tables. There was a doctor in the building who came, was trying to help people. He shot the doctor. So he ran outside. The police were out there. Police shot him. He ran back inside. They didn't kill him. And he hid upstairs with multiple gunshot wounds. The police finally got him. When they finally picked him up with gunshot wounds in him, he yelled, "Jews are committing genocide against his people." So, anyway, 11 people died that day. A lot of people were injured. Not the shooter. The shooter didn't die. The youngest person in that died was 54, and the oldest was 97.
Yeah, that's an old, synagogue, I think.
Yeah.
You know, old crowd, old congregation.
A lot of old people were there on the worship day. The guy actually was 46 at the time. According to his social media, he absolutely hated the Jews. And online, he was very friendly to neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the alt-right. He claimed Jews were the children of Satan. He also hated white women that had black boyfriends. He denied the Holocaust ever happened.
Yeah, he hated the whole world, actually.
Well, he hates those people in particular. Anyway, 63 federal counts against him. He was found guilty of 63 federal counts.
63.
So,
more
and
than
this
Trump.
week, he was sentenced to death.
Wow, is it? Oh, really? It's sentenced to death. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
there are states in the United States where the death penalty is still legal. And so, and you know me, I'm not for the death penalty, but, I'm not for the death penalty in certain cases where, we are unsure, we're possibly unsure, or maybe there were extenuating circumstances. This is not one of those times.
Yeah.
This is this is the guy. I mean, he's guilty.
Yeah, he's guilty. He was there. He killed how many? A lot.
11. Killed 11
11.
people. And he injured a lot of other people. I mean, it was, he was just shooting everybody. I know that a lot of people bring that up is, should the death penalty be legal? And I have always said no. Partly, one of the reasons why that, if you're a guy like this, it's like I believe that you should suffer. Just kidding. But mostly in the cases of there are extenuating circumstances. And that's what they said. They said when his lawyer said, look at his background, look where he came from. But when you look at his background and where he came from and what he'd been through, that was kind of him. That was kind of him doing that. He just specifically got on the web and he listened to the neo-Nazis and he listened to the white supremacists, and he just, he became that way. Is it 100% his fault? Okay, well, let's say 97.6% his fault.
I believe so, because, somebody can do something like that if there's something inside you. There's hatred, I don't know what else he has in his mind, because, if you are listening to those kind of stories, you're going to imbibe it. You're going to get it to your system. The moment you have it in your system, there's a tendency for you, the hate is there. So what are you thinking? You hate people. He hate who?
He hates people because of their religious beliefs.
See, look at that. If you are in the right mental, mental health, he will not do that.
They call the Jews another race, but they're really not another race. They're
No.
really just white people like us.
Yeah.
And I mean, for history, the people have hated the Jews. They've been killing the Jews for tens of thousands of years. But the fact that it's happening now, now in this day and age, I think is what is a struggle that I have, that we seem to come so far and then all of a sudden we're not anywhere near where we thought we were. We think that we have passed all this as human beings, but we haven't. And it's all based on religious beliefs and bigotry, over a God that neither one of us can prove exists. Not me, not the Jews, not the Catholics, not the Hindus. Well, just, we have faith, we have our own faith, but nobody's been able to actually prove anything yet. And this is what we're killing each other over.
Well, I don't know the background of that guy. So how old is that guy?
He was 46 at the time.
46, and now he's 50.
Now, so that was 2018. So
I see.
he is now, but now he will go through a whole series of appeals and so forth and so on before the actual death sentence comes up. So that's going to be years from now. But it's just, I just want to, but it's a kind of a cap to the story that we've been talking about. Now, moving on here, there's another story that we have talked about in the past, and that is Pakistan. And if anybody watches this show, they know that I have talked about Pakistan recently because it's raining there, and it's raining a lot. It rained so much in Pakistan that most of the part of the country that was not underwater before is now underwater.
See what's happening now. They always say it's because of climate change.
Yes. The reason that it's raining so much, and I mean, you can agree with it or disagree with it, but scientists say, listen, this is why. This is why there is so many storm clouds there, and it is because of the heat rising from this part of the world, and it pushes the air down to this part of the world, and it's not supposed to happen like that. And that's why people in Pakistan have been living there for so many thousands and thousands of years, and now all of a sudden there's no land because it's underwater. So what are you going to do in a country with millions and millions of people? What are the long-term effects of the population there? So now that we know, or that scientists have pretty much, in my opinion, proven that this is based by man-made climate change, and it starts to bring up the subject of, in Pakistan, 1,700 people have died. 33 million people have lost their homes.
Wow.
800,000 cattle and livestock have died. 28,000 schools and medical clinics are gone.
Wow.
Some have described the rains there as monsoon on steroids, just because it just is so relentless. And there's problems now of waterborne diseases and high levels of poverty. But there's things going on now that you might not notice. And those are what we're going to talk about today, because that is something that is in the news this week. Problems such as underweight pregnant women. And those women who have babies and then they have no home to go to. They have no place to breastfeed. And this leads to poor health for the babies, disease with lasting effects, and stunted growth. So the question that they asked this week is this God's fault or is this man's fault?
I don't think you can blame God for that. It's men are the one that creates the problem.
I'm tending to agree with you here. If children will grow up in poor health with these lifelong problems because of this man-made climate change, are some of the countries that produce the most of the carbon, are they now responsible for the problems that happen to countries like Pakistan, who basically have very little to almost nothing to do with climate change?
Well, if they say it's a man-made, it's like a man-made calamity, so it could really be people. But, maybe it's bound to happen, things like this, because nobody tell us before that, this climate change thing will happen these days. So nobody told us. Did you know that, Eric, before?
I mean, climate change has been on the radar now for about 25 years. Now, it's been on the radar way long before that, but now, I mean, it's really been in the news for about 25 years now. The issue, I think, that a lot of people have with it now is the fact that oh, wow, this is happening. I mean, this has been we've known about this for 50 years. But it really started getting in the news about, I would say, 25, maybe 30 years ago. Is the fact that we have really done very little to deal with it, even though we know. And this group now, this week called the Islamic Relief Worldwide group, they came out, and that's what they are looking at. They are looking at these problems in Pakistan and the fact that what is this going to do to the population later? And what he said was, and I'd like to read this, I got this on my laptop here, no amount of financial aid can compensate those who have lost loved ones and seen their homes and everything they own destroyed. But we need to see climate justice, where the biggest polluters pay for the damage and destruction caused by climate change. As climate change-related catastrophes increase, it is the poorest and the most vulnerable people who will bear the brunt of the suffering. They are the ones most likely to live in fragile homes and least likely to have savings to fall back on or assets to sell or any kind of plan B when floods hit the crops and livestock and wipe them out. So what they are saying is, all right, this happened to these people, and now they're even poorer, worse off than they were before. Should the countries that caused it pay for the destruction that they have caused?
If somebody will initiate charging the whatever country,
I know. Who would be the one?
Yeah, who? And then, of course, they will deny it. Nobody will admit, no, we didn't do that, no.
I mean,
there will be a big issue
They are saying that Pakistan is responsible or produces less than 1% of the world's global emissions. Less than 1%. So, should Pakistan be a priority for climate funding? And they did another thing here. I read it somewhere that researchers believe that in a 60-day period, there was 50% more intense rainfall than if the climate conditions that we've had for the last 50 years had been unchanged. So this is where they're getting this from. And, you know, this has led to multiple crops, no output, inflation going up 38% in the country, plunging 6 million people into poverty. So I guess the question being, should the larger industrialized nations bear the responsibility for Pakistan having short people in the future? Because all the kids are having stunted growth. And so they're going to have little people in Pakistan. Should we pay?
Well, for me, you know, there's nobody to blame now except that they have to find a solution. Find a solution. So, and
I mean, good luck with that. Find a solution. We know the solution.
Yeah, but you know, make maybe a strict rules that, you know, you have to do this, you have to implement it, make it like a mandatory thing, like, you know, an authoritarian type of leadership.
Good luck. That's going to take the space aliens coming down and doing something like that.
Well, what else to do?
We tried doing this before, and look what happened when Donald Trump got into office. I mean, the first thing he did was pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. What if other countries decide to do that as well? Like, oh, well, wait a minute, we have a new leader now, new conservative leader. We think that climate change is all poppycock. We're going to pull our country out. I mean, there's no way to tell, and
it's hard.
You know, we all say we're doing this, but what is it? What is that thing we talked about before? The point of no return, and how close are we to the point of no return? Where even if we stopped it, it's still going to rain in Pakistan.
Of course. Rain is all over. Look, where some areas and even the Philippines are flooded still now. I mean, up to now.
Come over to Ermita.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you some floods. Now, speaking of places that are having stability problems, I want to talk a little bit about Niger because they've been in the news a lot. Now, we have not talked about Niger on the show ever. Maybe every once in a while.
Yeah.
And they're a pretty stable country. I mean, they've had their fair share of coups in the past. Usually we're talking about their neighbors because their neighbors are pretty, they have a lot of stuff there. But it's another poor nation in West Africa. But this week they're one of the biggest stories in the world because they are having a coup. And people are noticing that they are having a coup. They had an election, and now the military has decided we don't like the election outcome, and so we're going to take over. And we are going to put our own guy in because we have the guns.
Wow.
And so the guy that you just voted in, by popular, no question he won the election, he's going to be arrested. And they threw out the President Mohamed Bazoum, and they have seemed to put their own president in, who is a general, and suspended the country's constitution. And this was never supposed to happen in Niger. And so countries like the United States and France, who have military installations there, they're like, wait a minute, this has got to stop. We have to stop this right now. And all the surrounding nations are jumping in and saying, hey, this has to stop. So what is going to happen now? Is there going to be fighting? Is there going to be, did they put an ultimatum on them?
Yeah,
it's like,
I
you got to
think
get this thing, you got to get this thing figured out, or we're going to have to, we're going to come in and deal with this ourselves.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're not just a poor country, they have uranium. In fact, they produced, I think, 7% of the world's uranium supply. So this is something that's going to be interesting, how this all plays out, and what kind of influence does Russia have on this? And I think that's why the United States is so up in arms and said the United States is, listen, you guys can't do this, because they don't want this kind of thing spreading over Africa or the world or even the United States.
So what do you think the U.S. will do with this one?
Yeah, I know. That's what is going to be interesting to see what comes out. What's France going to do? This was a colony of France for a long time. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I wanted to bring this up because I know that this next week and the next 2 weeks, this is going to become big news. So I wanted to touch on it a little bit today, so that when it does come up again, we can discuss it, because I don't think I've ever even remembered talking about Niger for any reason except to say, oh, it borders this country, which is having all kinds of problems. But speaking of things that we have talked about over and over and over again, we're at the 530-day mark of the Ukrainian war.
Already 530?
Yep. So we are up there, and there is no end in sight. However, there has been some news, some developments this week, which I wanted to touch on just a little bit. One being, there's a 112-meter Russian transport ship that they use to bring soldiers and hardware and supplies back and forth to the ports of Ukraine. Well, the Ukrainians sent a sea drone right into the side of that giant ship and put a hole in it.
Oh, all right. I find it interesting.
So that's a problem. That's a problem because right now that ship, if you look at the footage, you can see the drone going across and hits the boat. The boat flips up on its side, and now there's oil spilling out into the water, and that boat looks to be totally out of commission. And this is a big deal because this is how they got people and hardware, tanks and things into there. So that's one of the developments. Also, J.P. Morgan, one of the largest banks in the world, has stopped processing the payments for the Russian Agricultural Bank.
Oh, really?
And I thought that, I was surprised that they were allowed to do that anyway. I think we spoke about this once before. But the United States government finally said, all right, that's enough. No more. So you may be paying a lot more for grain here in the Philippines. I'm not sure exactly how that's all going to work. But as far as J.P. Morgan goes, they are no longer going to take payments for that. And this leads us to the big story of the week is Saudi Arabia, of all places, is talking about the possibility of peace between the Ukrainians and the Russians. Now, of all people,
what's in it for
what's in Saudi Arabia? Because they can't figure out their peace in the Middle East yet, in their region.
They have their own issue.
So anyway, they have a big summit there this week in Saudi Arabia. The U.S. came, China came, India came. They were all in on this. And they were hoping to basically find, some basic principles that they can all swallow, and most notably that they can get Russia to swallow, which, not surprisingly, Russia did not show up to the summit. And they want to push to get these countries that have not picked a side to finally pick a side, so that the world can be united in stopping this war.
Wow.
So anyway,
so what do you think? What will happen there? Do you think they will have that power or charisma?
They already said that they're not going to produce a joint statement or anything like that. They're just going to produce a plan to further talk about it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, fine.
Maybe they need us, Eric.
So maybe we should go over there and help them out.
Yes.
Of course, the Saudis, they're looking at this from the Saudi point of view, which is oil. They got a big partnership with Russia going on with the oil business there. So they see an advantage, the Saudis see an advantage in fixing this problem. Because war does not benefit the Saudis. They're about making money. And war, it doesn't make money. Yeah. And so that's China's position as well. And everybody's wondering what China's going to do. What's China's position? And how will this go? Because it's not been so clear how China's going to fall on this whole thing. They've kind of been, oh yes, we're not against the war. Oh, Russia, you're our friend still though, right? Because we've been buying really cheap oil from you. But so China has come out and said, we're not necessarily going to pick Ukraine as our side, but we are going to just still sit tight. But they showed up, so this is a development.
Well, I hope they're going to come up with something, positive for benefit of, either Russia, Ukraine, or any country for that matter. Because, we have so much things ongoing around the world already. We need peace. We need, why don't we just shake hands and, hey, go back to work, boys.
We got enough problems with everything. With coups and climate change and, other issues. And speaking of Russia, our friend here on the show that we have talked about, I don't know how many times, Alexei Navalny.
Yeah.
And we have spoken about him many times from the time that he, was trying to run in the presidency against Putin, and that he was the only leader in Russia that even had a chance of, to the point where he scared Putin enough that Putin tried to assassinate him.
Yeah.
And poisoned him on an airplane with some of that nuclear poison that they, they have there from the old Soviet time. So when he was poisoned, they took him to a Russian hospital, and of course they said, well, we're not really sure what this is. We're not sure if it's poison. So they put him on a plane and took him to Germany, and Germany's like, it's poison. It's the Soviet nuclear poison that they poisoned the same people in the UK with, just a few months earlier. So they got him back to health. And then what did Alexei do? He wants to fight for his country. So he went back to Russia. Now, the first thing they did when he stepped off the plane was arrest him. And the reason they arrested him is because he left the country without permission.
What?
Of course, he left the country because they poisoned him. But anyway, so they arrested him. And then they came up with this charge about him being corrupt, some kind of corruption charge, which his whole thing is corruption. His whole thing is fighting against corruption in Russia. So it's just kind of ironic that that's what they got him on. And so they put him in one of the worst penal colonies in the world.
My God.
And that's where he has been. So they had another trial, a secret trial, which happened in the penal colony, and they found him guilty again. So he is now looking at 19 years in jail in a penal colony, in the IK6 penal colony, which is one of the worst places you could possibly be. And they got him for extremist community, financing extremist activities and other crimes like that. So Navalny came out with a statement. I want to read the statement because what he says is true. The years don't matter. Basically, they made the sentence based on how long they think he will live. And so that's why it's 19 years. So Navalny said 19 years is a special in a special regime colony, the number doesn't matter. I understand very well that, like many political prisoners, I am serving a life sentence, where life is measured by the duration of my life or the life of this regime, which is true. Because if Putin ever gets out, I bet you that they will release Navalny. But he said, the number from the verdict is not for me, it's for you. They want to frighten you, not me, and deprive you. You must resist. You will be forced to surrender your Russia without a fight to a gang of traitors, thieves, and scoundrels who have seized power. Putin should not achieve his goal. Don't lose the will to resist.
Wow, that is a pretty, a strong statement. But my question is, okay, if that is 19 years, do you think he will survive that long?
Will he make it even a few years? I mean, I'm hoping that he can. He will not survive 19 years.
Oh, definitely.
But if he survives until Putin is out of office, is the question. So let's see. Let's wait. We will continue to update you on Navalny's. Now, Navalny's YouTube director also was found guilty and given 8 years. 8 years for posting YouTube videos.
There's so many people that I know that are, they posted their own live in the video. So how come they're not, they're not...
I mean, the interesting thing is this guy, they not only got him 8 years in prison, but they also took all his property and all his money, so when he gets out of prison, he will have nothing.
Wow. So, if I am that guy, I'll just stay in prison. I have no place to go anymore. I mean, I have nothing. So just because of he's against the president, to name the guy is Putin. So this is what happened.
You think living in an authoritarian nation is fun? You want to vote for an authoritarian leader there in Russia? This is what it's like. But in a related story, which I wanted to talk just really quickly about this, there's a soprano named Anna Netrebko. If I could say her name correctly. She is Russian, and she sings for the Met, and she is a superstar in the Met. She is one of the most popular, highest paid opera singers in the world. And she sings at the Met. However, she's Russian. So once the war started, they kind of let her go from the Met. And so she's suing the Met for $360,000. Because they wanted her to repudiate Putin. They wanted her to say something bad out against Putin. And here we go with music. They want, if anybody that has any, she's a diva, and she is saying that she is now the scapegoat of this whole, war issue between these two. So the American Guild of Musical Artists is siding with her, saying that the Met, they owe her this money because they literally fired her because she's Russian.
Oh.
So, and now here's the ironic thing is now the Russian politicians have denounced her because she said, I'm just a musician, and she won't say, Putin's in the right. So now the Russians have denounced her, and now they won't let her perform in Russian theaters either. And her family in Russia has been threatened. So she's been able to perform in Italy, and she's coming to France, but she's been caught up in this political firestorm between Russia and the United States.
Oh my God.
So I don't know, I just found that an interesting story, and as well as this other story, which has popped up on my radar a couple of times, the Ukrainian fencer. Now, at the World Championships, I just think it's an interesting story. I just want to get your take on it, and the opera singer as well. The Ukrainian fencer in the World Championships, she crushed her Russian opponent. Just and when it came time to, it was obviously over, she held out her sword, which is they used to do. They used to, you touch swords at the end of the match. But according to the rules, they have to shake hands. She's like, I'm not going to shake a Russian's hand.
Oh, wow.
I can't shake a Russian's hand. And so the Russian protested, sat there in the middle of the floor for like hours and said, you have to disqualify her. I'm the winner. You have to disqualify her because it says in the rules she must shake her hand. And so they had to disqualify her. They had to now, disqualifying her means that what? She can't be in the team event. That means she can't be in the Olympics. So everybody's like, what should we do? What do you do in this kind of thing? Yeah. And so the IOC had to come in, and they said, you know what? All right, we're going to let you be in the team event, and we're going to let you qualify for the Olympics. In fact, we're going to give you a spot in the Olympics because you're Ukrainian. But this has opened up a whole can of worms because now people are saying that Russia should never be allowed to compete in the Olympics coming up.
Look what happened now. I mean, you know, if there is a war, all the people are affected. Although, you know, they have nothing to do with it. I don't understand that part. So
I know. I mean, this is where it gets hard. This is where it gets hard, where it affects people that are not just there fighting. That a Ukrainian swordsman cannot shake the hand of a Russian. And she's in a horrible position because if she shakes the hands of the Russian, what position is that going to put her in?
Yeah, it's very tough.
And I feel so bad for this Russian singer at the Met.
Yeah, I mean, she's a singer. She's a wonderful singer. All she has to.
She's one of the most famous singers, and literally they fired her because she's Russian. Yeah. Because, you know, in the United States, the head of the Met was like, well, we can't have Russians singing.
Oh my God!
And so you know, it's just it's one of those subjects that I think, you know, we don't think about, you know, in these times of war, but how it affects so many people. Yeah. And I just, you know, it's just a subject I wanted to bring up because it was the thing. It makes you put your, you know, hand on your head and go, oh my God, I can't believe that you know, this woman who's one of the greatest swords people in the world might have gotten very close to being ousted from the Olympics.
Oh wow! I hope they won't. I hope.
So it turns out that the head of the IOC is also a fencer, and he said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Good.
We understand.
That's good.
So anyway, they understand that, and we understand that we are just about out of time here on the World News Jam. So for me, Eric Lecain, Lolly Tolentino, here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJ TV. Thank you so much for joining your Sunday evening with us and talking about interesting stories going on around the world, and I hope that you will be back with us next week to talk about more stories and more interesting stuff with me and Lolly Tolentino here. So for now, good night, Lolly.
Good night, Eric. Good night, everyone.
Everybody stay safe out there. We'll see you next week.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not